Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Songwriting Simplified with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. It is incredibly hot today. It is unseasonably hot, in fact. It is just a little bit shy of the all-time record high temperature for April in Scotland. So, my gosh. So I do have a fan on here in the background, basically keeping me cool. So you might be able to hear it whirring away in the background. I do have a noise suppressor on this microphone, thanks to the awesome noise suppressor plugin that is in OBS that is taking care of that. So you may or may not be able to hear it. Maybe you can only hear it when I talk, which would be about right, because it's essentially it's an expander basically. So I apologize if the whirring gets on your nerves. Knives? That was like a New Jersey accent. I don't know where that came from. But yeah, I hope it doesn't get on your nerves. All right, so I'm chuckling. The reason why I'm chuckling at the start here is because Bobby Booth was first in the door tonight, and not Billy Morgan. Billy Morgan's first in the door streak has been broken by Bobby Booth. Congratulations, Bobby, for doing that. Followed about 9 minutes later by Brett Marler, which is a fun name to say with my accent. And he has a question, which we'll get to in just a minute. I also have an email question, which I will also get to in just a wee moment. But the aforementioned Billy Morgan is also here. Keith from Radio Tuck Frumpet is also here. We got Dwayne here as well. We got Tony Stringer. We've got Gardner99. We've got Cal Trajusiak. And we got Cesar. Cesar Nova is here. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. He says, most seductive accent in the audio world. I didn't care about that, but maybe. I don't really seem to get a whole lot of fan emails from the lassies, unfortunately, to provide substantive evidence of your supposition here. But thank you very much. I appreciate that. Let's see. Everything works like a charm. Well, you know what? Glad to hear that. Following from our conversation on the Studio One meetup. That's great news. And Gardner99 says 81 degrees Fahrenheit, mostly cloudy. Feels like 85 here in New Orleans. Well, that's very, very nice. Let me see what it is just now here. I have to set this into Fahrenheit for you weirdos that do Fahrenheit. I don't know why America is the only country in the world that does this, but you do. It's 52 currently, but today it has been as high as 81 as well. I think we peaked at 81 at like 1 o'clock this afternoon, but right now it is 52. But unfortunately, this string of extremely hot, unseasonably hot days is coming to an end. The temperature is going to drop quite dramatically, down by about 10 or 12 degrees Celsius, which is, I mean, that's like going back to slightly warmer t-shirt weather here in Scotland, because we are tough. Even when it's like 3 degrees below freezing, we still wear t-shirts and kilts. So anyway, this is not the weather channel. This is Songwriting Simplified, where we talk songwriting, composing, and arranging, and all that fun stuff that goes with that, as well as music theory, everybody's favorite subject. I need something to drink. Hang on. I also got something stuck to my tongue. So where Cesar is, it's 16 degrees, which is just a wee bit warmer than here. That might be quite uncomfortably warm in the middle of the night, for sure. Right now it is like 9 minutes past midnight. Where you are, it's probably not quite that yet. Brett says, lots of rolled R's. Yes. Brett Marla. Yeah, it's a fun one. It's a fun one to see. Alright, so let's get to questions. Irish coffee, no, it's tea, actually. It's just regular tea with just a wee splash of milk. And I don't use sugar anymore. I used to use sugar for many, many years. But now I have a blood disorder. I cannot have nearly as much sugar as I would like. So I've cut out maybe about 80% of my sugar from my diet. And so as a result, I have sweeteners in my tea instead of sugar. And I don't eat chocolate very much anymore. Easter was the first time I've had chocolate in over a year. Because, you know, I have to manage my condition. Unfortunately, it is the way it is. I've had to make some quite dramatic changes to my lifestyle and to my diet in order to slow down the progress of my blood disorder. So it's not exactly a fun game, particularly. No sugar tonight, no sugar tonight sounds like a song, and that also kind of like sounds like a metaphor for something somewhat a little bit audio smut, perhaps. All right, so let's get to questions. Now that we've wasted 10 minutes of the show, which I don't mind doing. So let's take care of the emailed question first, which comes from our good friend Ron, who is also known as Keyman because he is a pretty awesome keyboard player, piano player, Hammond organ player. He kind of does all of that stuff extremely well. So no, it's not diabetes. I do not have diabetes. I have a blood disorder, which basically means that my veins don't work very well anymore. And particularly in my lower extremities, so like my legs and my arms, my veins don't work properly anymore, especially the return veins. So the blood goes down, and of course it has to come back via return veins and return valves. Those don't really work very well anymore, and it is a chronic progressive condition. The issue with the veins began as a result of my second bout with cellulitis. And what happened was the cellulitis actually got into my bloodstream and infected my blood. So, yeah. So cellulitis basically got into my bloodstream, infected my blood, and basically messed up my veins. And I'm trying to use polite words. Because I think at New Year's, I might have put an awful lot of money in the swear jar. So I'm trying to, you know, kind of save my pennies a wee bit just for now. So yeah, there's no cure for it. It's not a terminal condition. But it is a life-limiting condition. Basically, it just progresses, and all we can do really is try and slow it down. But yes, it's life-limiting. Let's just say it took me a long time to get my head around that. And it took me a long time to get used to the idea that this particular disease could actually foreshorten my life. And, you know, so I had to deal with that a little bit, and I have dealt with that quite a bit. But then the logical side of my brain kicked in, and, you know, I thought to myself, well, my life could be foreshortened at any time, really. because I could get struck by lightning, I could get an arrow through the neck with a gas bill tied to the end of it. I could get run over by a very slow-moving heavy roller. I could die in a freak yachting accident. So, there's all of these other methods by which I could die. And I could also die from overexposure to country music. So, there's other methods that could actually foreshorten my life. So when I thought more logically about that, I kind of thought, life-limiting blood condition, meh, so what? And yes, someone could drop a house on me. Or one of those Acme anvils from the cartoons. That would probably do it fairly efficiently. So let's get to... Dave is here, by the way, which is cool. So let's get to this question from Ron before we go any further down the rabbit hole of my impending death. So the question he has is not so much a songwriting question, but useful for writing charts. In maybe a jazz funk or a pop kind of scenario. And he's talking about Grover Washington Jr.'s arrangement of the song Soulful Strut, which has a swung 16th note feel to it. And he wants to know, how can we convey that feel on a chart? Very, very simply. And actually, this method is the one that I have seen on pretty much every chart I have ever played that has swung 16ths. And it's really, really simple. It's actually unbelievably simple. And you can do it in Notion, and Notion will play it back with the swung 16th note feel. It's brilliant. But it's really, really simple. And it means you don't actually have to make the notation that you write any more complicated. You can continue to write regular 16th notes. The only thing you might want to do is put in some 16th note triplets here, there, and everywhere where they might be required by the music. But you can do this with regular 16th notes, and the musician who is playing the chart will know exactly what you're talking about when you see this instruction. And it is just an instruction. So let me show you in Notion how we do this. So let's get Notion open and I will show you this. There we go. Put me at the top corner there. So literally that is the instruction right there. Swing 16ths. So how do we get Notion to do this? So let's take the swing 16ths thing away. I'm going to delete it. And let's play it without the swing 16ths. No, that's the wrong button. All right, so this was me using step entry mode to basically just get some 16th notes into Notion. And you can do that by clicking on this guy here, step record, select your note value, play your notes in here. And it works pretty nicely. So when you've got the notes entered in as 16th notes, at the moment they just sound like regular straight 16th notes. But that's not what we want. So, how do we change it? How do we make it swung? Well, we go to the tools grid here, and we click on this guy here, the tempo tool. And what this does is this opens all relevant tempo tools that are related to anything to do with tempo. So we've got tempo marking, and then we got this guy here that looks like the tempo has got a little bit drunk. which is actually a very apt little icon for it, to be honest. And then we've got Alex, not Alex, we've got accelerando, and we've got ritardo. All Italian instructions. Accelerando, I think most people know what that is. You know, it's get faster. And when you bring this instruction into Notion, it will allow you to set parameters, the start tempo and the target tempo, and then it will graduate an accelerando between the 2 points. And the same with the ritardando as well, except in reverse. It gives you a starting tempo and a target tempo to slow down to, and then an a tempo to revert to the first tempo, which is what a means. A tempo, first tempo, original tempo, or the last tempo marking that was entered. So maybe your song starts at 70 BPM, and then maybe you have a section which is in almost double time, it's 120, and then you have a ritardando back down to the 70. And then you go back to original tempo, or back to the last tempo, for example. That's what that would do. But that's not why we're here. We're here to swing we're here not to swing Melodyne. We are here to swing Notion and make this guy play some jazz. So we are going to click on here. And when we do, we see the word swing appears. And we have straight, which is a contradiction in terms. And we have swing eighth notes. And we have swing sixteenths. And we have this option here, enter swing for all parts. So if you are writing a big band chart, or a horn section chart, or just a rhythm section and horn section condenser score, which is mostly what I write because I'm writing for commercial recordings, and I'm writing rhythm charts and horn section charts, and kind of all the other stuff, the vocals and stuff, they don't require charting out, but those things do. And so if I'm doing something that requires, you know, a funk shuffle kind of thing, like the Rosanna Shuffle, for example, we can do this with swing sixteenths. So I'm going to select swing sixteenths, and notice the swing now says swing sixteenths, and we've got this sliding scale. Now, what does this sliding scale do? This is how swung you want it to be. So let's slam it all the way up to 90. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on this guy so I'm not dropping in any more swing stuff anywhere. And I'm going to hit play. Now listen to this. Okay, 90 is way, way, way too much. So let's click on this guy and we'll drag this all the way back to the other end. Now let's see what happens if we do this. So let's go back to play. Now, what do we have here? We have another musical concept. Right here is what we have, a very fine example of what we call the Scots snap. You hear this particular rhythmic device where you have this, instead of having long short, which is what you have in most swing music or jazz music, in Scottish folk music, you have the reverse. In some cases, not all the time, but sometimes you have the reverse, and that's called a Scots snap. And that's where you have short, long, da-da, 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 da-da. Okay? And that's what we've created here, but we don't want that either. We want something around this region here. So we've got a little bit of a swing, but not too much of a swing. So I'm going to set that to 22, and let's go back and play it. All right, let's increase that swing a little bit more. Now, that sounds much more like classical music when you're doing a 6/8 thing. Right? That's too much. So around about where we were, 21, is probably about right, where it's kind of swung, but it's not too much. the distance between the long and the short of the swung value is not too massive. And so you end up with a music that has a swing to it and it has a lilt to it, which is what we want in this case. All right, so that is how we make Notion swing. Now, it might have been easier if to this chart I had also added drums playing, you know, the jazz ride thing for a little bit of context. But I think this works just fine. Now, once you're happy with this, you can just click away and the little sliding thing goes away and it now just says swing 16ths. And if you were to see this on if you were to see this instruction on any professional chart, let's say this would be the chart for Stevie Wonder's Duke. All of that's done with swung 16ths, by the way. And if you put this instruction on it, swung 16ths, every musician knows exactly what to do. They all know. They know exactly what needs to be done. And that's exactly how they play it, even though on the chart it would look like this. Okay, so Ron, I hope that helps you. It's a great question. Let's go back over to the lounge. And we'll go back over. I'm looking at the wrong screen. I can't see you guys. There we are. All right, so that is a great question. Let's go back and see what else we have, because Brett Murla, and I'm going to keep rolling those R's just for you, Brett. He says, what kind of tips or tricks can you give us in regard to changing feel, such as going between half-time or double time, or going from a straight groove to something more swing? Again, going back to Ron's chart there. You can switch from swung to straight. So if I go back to that chart, and let's say about halfway through that chart, that Notion chart, we decide to play this last bit dead straight instead of swung. So let's go back over here, and we'll go and we'll grab this swing thing here, and what we'll do is we'll drop it here, and we'll make that straight. Now notice that the slider is now grayed out. So if I play this, you'll now hear that these are now straight 16ths. All right, so there you go. So you can basically tell somebody to go and play this particular part as straight, and then you can, if you really want to, you can go right back to swing right here. And it'll retain your swing value here. We just make sure that we have swing 16ths again. And then the rest of the chart will be played as swing 16ths as you might want. All right, so that would be how you would do that on a chart. But we might not be talking about a chart. How do we go from a half-time feel to a double-time feel? Well, this is where your drummer in your band is going to play the most important role. You can have that written on a chart as an instruction. So in the same way that we have swing 16ths and straight and then back to swing, you can do the same on a chart. And you can put half-time feel, double-time feel. Now, what is the drummer going to do? You might keep the pulse exactly the same, and you might keep the song in 4/4 all the way through. So let's say your tempo is 140 BPM. It's a straight up, shuffle, rock shuffle. Right? And then you have a middle section where you want the drummer to go into a halftime feel. So if you just stick on the chart, halftime, the drummer is going to switch that backbeat onto beat 3 only. So he'll be going until you put the instruction after that to say back to double time. And then it's up to the drummer to lead that and lead the band back to that double time with an appropriate drum fill. So that might be to go, and that would do it. In fact, that's what I would do as a drummer. And then, you know, if I wanted to go into the halftime, I would play, you know, maybe quarter notes as a drum fill instead of eighth notes. Or I'd maybe play quarter note triplets. So and that would, you know, kind of tell the band we're going into this halftime feel, and we've done it by using quarter note triplets. So you don't have to write anything out that's complicated on a chart. You just have to basically give the musicians instructions on the chart and just write everything out normal like you would. But when you're in that halftime feel, you got to remember that the pulse is still at 140 BPM. So 4 beats in a bar is still going at you know, 140 beats a minute. So the halftime feel, that backbeat is now on beat 3 instead of beats 2 and 4. It's on beat 3, and now effectively 1 bar is now 2 bars, because the snare drum, the backbeat on the snare drum is now on beat 3 every time. So you just gotta bear that in mind, that what was eighth note triplets is now going to be effectively 16th note triplets. But you're not writing it out like that. You're continuing to write them out as eighth note triplets. They'll just have a different feel to them, a different emphasis. So that would be the way that I would recommend you do that. Do it by instruction. Do it by verbal instruction, preferably, because then, you know, you don't have to write anything out. You don't have to write anything that somebody has to sight read. And, you know, then you might have a scenario of miscommunication because you've written something out one particular way and it's maybe not the easiest way to read it. So, you know, that's kind of something to bear in mind. That sometimes writing out a chart can be really, really good, but if you have too much detail in your chart that is very widely open to interpretation, then a musician, or, you know, maybe not open to interpretation enough, then musicians aren't going to be able to play what you want straight away. Sometimes the best thing is to give them less on the chart and more verbal direction. If I'm in a recording studio scenario as a drummer or a piano player, for me, less is always more. So less on the chart is more, not just because it means I'm having to read less, but it means that there's more room for interpretation. And there's more room for musicianship to take place. And it's less me just kind of playing literally what's on the chart and going home. Not that I can't do that, I can. I can turn up, set up my drums, get levels with the producer and the recording engineer, and then play the chart just to a click track if I have to and nothing else, and then pack up my gear and go to the next session. I've done that. It's not the funnest way to do it, but it's certainly something that can be done. And I think having done that and then having heard the results of having recorded that way, I don't think you end up with the best results. But it depends upon the music that you're playing. If you're playing something that's, you know, maybe a little film scoric or a little orchestral, or, you know, something very, very precise is very strictly required, write that out. Then the musician is just going to play literally what's on the page. And, you know, there are occasions where that's going to work best and is going to fit best. So I hope that that helps. Now Dave is questioning the note values in my notation example. He says cut time or just the symbol on the chart. You can do it that way too. That was maybe the most common way to do it in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Not really the common way to do it anymore. Doing the common time symbol with the slash through it. Notion will do that, by the way, but it's not the most common way to write that anymore. In big bands, I have played old charts where it's written that way. And if you're going to be a professional drummer, you got to know how that works. Even though you are very, very, these days in 2025, you are so rarely ever going to come across it. It's something I do come across and something I have come across. But really, it's incredibly rare. I know how it works because I've been well instructed. I was well taught when I was coming up, starting out as a session drummer. I was well taught by other people who were session drummers, who told me all of that stuff and gave me the heads up and explained all of that stuff to me so I knew what to expect. But it's to see cut common and then common on a chart, you don't see it anymore. It's done by, instructions like I showed. Swing 16ths, swing 8ths, straight. That's it. And it's so much easier to read. If you put the slash through the common time, it makes it much harder to read. I know the design behind cut common was actually to make it easier to read. It really doesn't. If you're playing Brazilian music like samba, mambo, frevo, marcha, and all of those kind of styles from Brazil, all of that is in cut common time. All of it. And that's really, if I was to say the most common place that I have ever come across cut common, that's where it is. Playing samba and all of that stuff. It's all in cut common time. So for those of you that don't know what cut common time is, it's basically, instead of saying 4/4, you're saying 2/2. So instead of 4 quarter notes in a bar, you're saying 2 half notes in a bar. And some of you are going to say, hey, basic math here, but aren't those exactly the same thing? Kinda. It's a different pulse. So for samba, it's 2/2 or cut common time because the pulse is on the 1 and the 3. 1, 3, 1, 3, right? And all the other upbeats that you hear on other parts of the samba percussion section, they are just upbeat accents against that grounded pulse on the 1 and the 3. And that's why it's in cut common time, because the pulse is 2 half notes in the bar. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, there are some arrangers that have tried to help other musicians and make this simpler again. Instead of going with 2/2, they write it in 2/4. And I've played a lot of samba charts where it's written in 2/4. And actually, it's far easier to play than cut common time. Far easier. Because when you're in cut common time, 8th notes are now 16th notes against that pulse. 1 and 2 and 1 and 1. It's like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a da 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 da. 1E and a 2E and a 3 and except it's in 4. It's in 2/2. So 1E and a 2E and a 1E and a 2E and a. To me, that's 16th notes, not 8th notes. 8th notes are 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? But cut common time basically says the pulse is on the 1 and the 3, so therefore it's 2 half notes. 1, 2, 1, 2. And in fact, if I was conducting it for a big band, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. That's exactly how I would conduct it. especially if it's a fast tempo. But yeah, and so some arrangers have written that in 2/4 instead of cut common or 2/2, because 2/4 is easier to read because now everything is just eighth note. It's just 16th notes instead of eighth notes. But yeah, it kind of depends what you prefer reading. Do you find 16th notes easier to read than eighth notes? Kind of depends, and it also depends upon how complicated the rhythms are. If the syncopations are really complicated, it might be easier to have those as eighth notes than 16th notes. So, thank you, Dave, for muddying the waters. Let's see. Gardner says Grover Washington Jr. plays F major 7, G minor 7, B flat major 7 in Soulful Strut. Yes, he does. Because it is particularly soulful. Cesar says, I love your sarcasm with country. It is sarcasm, but it's also what I genuinely believe. Ron is actually here. Ron, I answered your question. I answered your question about notation. So if you want, you can wait until the end and then go back to the start, and you'll see I answered your question first. But just for Ron's benefit, here we go. Swung 16ths, straight 8ths, or straight 16ths, swung 16ths again. This is how you write swung 16ths. And there's actually a little tool here for doing swing, and you just drop it in. So let's take this one, let's remove it, and I'll show you how to do it. So you go into the tool grid, you go into here, and then you grab the little drunken quarter note, and it does look like a drunken quarter note, and then you drop that where you want it, and this little dialog opens, and we want swung 16th, so we select that, and there it is. It gives it as an instruction. And then when you play the song with the swung 16ths, all of those are nicely swung. Which is just what you want. All right. I'm looking for other questions. We got 20 minutes to go, folks. So if you've got any other music theory or arranging or composing questions, then get them in the chat just for now. Carl says he has to run. He'll join chat later on. No problem, dude. Have a good one. I'll catch up with you very soon, my friend. Dry humor rocks. We need to drink a shot of dart afterwards to wet my palate. Yeah, Bob, dry humor is 100% what I do. It is the only humor that I know, in fact. Dry, sarcastic, acerbic wit is what I do. And it might be slightly native to Scotland as well. But yeah, I like to amplify, you know, kind of what would broadly classify as Scottish humor and dry it out even further. So I've made some joking references to my rather unfortunate blood disorder. For which there is no cure and is life-limiting, and most people will be pissed off by that. Well, you know what? When I was first diagnosed over a year ago, yeah, I was pissed off. I was pissed off. I'm not anymore. I just accept it for what it is. And I have had to learn how to live with it, and I've had to learn how to adjust my life accordingly. I've had to make some changes, some big ones. And I have medication I have to take. I have to wear compression socks on both my legs now. It was just in my left leg. It's now in my right leg as well. So I have to wear compression stockings on both legs. Yeah, It's not exactly all fun and games. Is the dry humour to compensate for the traditionally wet weather? See, everybody has this thing about the UK. Oh, the UK, it just rains all the time. Well, I know for a fact that there are parts of the United States where it rains all the time as well. Especially during tornado season, you get lots of rain during a tornado or during storm season. Just broadly in general, whether or not it's accompanied by tornadoes during thunderstorm season, you get a lot of rain. You get probably as much rain as we do. We don't get quite so many thunderstorms. And because the UK is basically just a group of islands off the coast of Europe, with the Atlantic on one side and the North Sea on the other, the thing that we have is when we get storms come through, they don't tend to last terribly long. Sometimes, if the conditions are right, they will last all day and all night. Depends upon the geography and depends also upon, kind of where the storm systems are located and kind of what's in front of them and what's behind them. Where the cold air is, where the warm air is, where the dry air is, where the moist, humid air is, and the directions of travel that those are all going in. Because we are a group of islands and there's a lot of sea surrounding us because there's sea all around us, you get the warmth of the sea and the cold of the sea as well, and, they can cancel out any hope of a storm developing. So sometimes we'll get a thunderstorm that's explosive for about half an hour and then it's gone. And then sometimes we'll have a storm that just refuses to blow itself out and it keeps going all day and it keeps going all night. We had that back in 2020, actually. August 2020. We had possibly one of the greatest storms in Scottish history, in actual fact. Because that storm did start in the afternoon and it went all through the day, all through the night, and on into the next morning before finally it moved out into the North Sea, and a surge of cold air from Scandinavia basically destroyed the storm, and that was it. It was done. It was not cycling back and coming back into land again. So yeah, everyone thinks it's really, really wet here in the UK. Sometimes it is, especially in the springtime, the early springtime, like, kind of early April, we can get a lot of rain then. There are parts of the UK that do get very, very wet. And parts of the UK which kind of therefore are regarded as topographically tropical. Not Scotland. Anyway, we have turned to the Weather Channel. By the way, if you didn't know, weather is something of a passion of mine as well. You have the Gulf Stream bringing you some moisture. Yes, we do. A lot of how good our storms are and how hot our summers are depends upon the location of the jet stream. And if it's bringing up warm air from Africa or cold, dry air from the Arctic. If we get the cold, dry air from the Arctic, then we don't get a hot summer particularly. It depends upon which is going to prevail. So high pressure systems, is what we want in the summertime, because, you get stable air, and that stable air allows the warm air from Africa to come up and come through. Anyway, this is not the Weather Channel. Stop it. Yeah, I love meteorology. It's a passion of mine. When I'm not doing music and I'm not doing personas things, weather is definitely something I'm very passionate about. Whether that's pun intended, whether that's weather in the United States, because I study storm and tornado genesis in the United States just for fun, but I also study storm and tornado genesis here in the UK. Now, we don't get storms as big or as violent, and we don't get tornadoes as big or as violent as you get them in the United States, because islands, you know, they're not conducive to tornadoes, really. But we get maybe a 30 or 40 tornadoes, and they're a bit shit compared to what you get in the States. But it is what it is, and if there's the chance of a tornado, I will go out and I will chase them on foot, which is maybe not the safest way to do it. Anyway, Dave says, based on Jetstream, it blows all of Scotland's... That's just funny. I'm not reading the rest of that, but that's funny. All right, let's get some music questions going for these last 10 minutes, folks. Seeing as this is Songwriting Simplified, not Meteorology Simplified. So if anyone asks any more meteorology questions, I am not answering them. Maybe I should start up a meteorology channel, focusing on storms in the UK, something like that, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just leave it well alone, because I'm not like an expert or anything. I know enough to be kind of dangerous, but I'm not really an expert. I'm not a meteorologist in the slightest. I'm just passionate about the subject. Just Bob is asking, Tourette's? No, I don't have Tourette's. Maybe it would be funny if I did, but maybe not. I don't know. I do have a friend who is a trumpet player who has Tourette's, and he has his own YouTube channel. I don't know whether he still has it, but he certainly did have it. Where he basically uses humor, because he's a very, very funny person, to talk about Tourette's and basically be completely open about it. And so it is very funny. His channel, I don't know, like I said, I don't know whether he still has it, but it certainly was a very funny channel where he would talk about trumpets and Tourette's. And yeah, his tics are off the charts, man. They are, I'm sure for anybody that suffers from Tourette's, it's not pleasant, it's not fun, but he tries to find the humor in it. And man, they are extremely funny videos. Very, very sweary. I would not have him on my channel, just simply because it would probably get taken down from all the sweary words. All right, so if we don't have any more questions, I am going to end the show here. Billy Morgan says, why does a song have a beginning and an end? Because if it didn't start, you would hear nothing. And if it didn't end, you would never stop hearing it. There you go. There you go. Just Bob says, I'm just sitting here wondering why products delivered by train are called shipments, and why when by boat is called cargo. That is a great question. I have no idea. It is strange. I'll give you that. I will grant you that. It is weird. What is the best way to introduce a metronome to correct time issues when writing a song? What is the best way to introduce a metronome to correct time issues when writing a song? I would say start with a metronome in the first place. Don't just introduce the idea of tempo kind of late in your song. I would start with it. Set your tempo. Now, I know some people prefer, when they are recording, not to use a click track. They prefer to use a drum loop, because a drum loop has a bit more to it than just a click track. Click tracks can be a little bit kind of dry and a little bit boring, and and therefore not easy to kind of groove with. Whereas something like a drum loop is a little bit more kind of realistic, and can provide you with, it can provide you with that pulse, but it can provide you with a little bit of groove as well, so you can find the pocket of your song much, much easier. Start with that. Start with finding the groove of your song first. And some of that, if you are the kind of person that writes words first and music afterwards, start speaking the words and see if you can find the pulse of the words. And then that will help you find where the tempo is and also the time signature. If you're not sure what the time signature of your song is, when you're writing your lyrics, write your lyrics, try and find the pulse, and then try and find where the strong beats are, where the sense of a downbeat is, and then count what the beats are between those downbeats. And that will give you some idea of what your tempo, what your time signature should be. So yeah, drum loops are definitely a good way to start actually just recording the bare bones basics of your song to get the framework down. Some people call those scratch tracks, where you're basically just putting guide tracks down. So you would have a drum loop and you put down a guide keyboard part that gives the harmonic framework of the song, as well as the form of the song. So where the verse, where the chorus and the bridge and everything else goes, as well as the chord changes. So start with that. Bob says, I run into a problem where I'm inconsistent following a groove that wavers sometimes and that causes meandering flow. See, if you've never really worked with a click, a metronome, before, you will find out pretty quickly where your sense of pulse is internally. You will find that. You'll find at first playing with a click is hard at first, because you find yourself falling off of it fairly quickly. And then you have to learn how to adjust to get back on it. Do I need to speed up a little? Do I need to slow a little? And finding where that is. Now, here's the cool thing about clicks over guide drum tracks. The cool thing about a click is the thing that it teaches you is to wait for the one. And I think that is a skill that should be mastered as soon as possible in your career as a musician. Learning to wait for the downbeat rather than snatch at it. Most people snatch at it. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is they start to play the note fractionally early before the one. So let's say we're going and we're counting 4 beats. And when we get to the next one, we're going to play that note there. We're just going to play a C. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Now, a lot of people will do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're a little bit early because they snatch at it. Usually that's caused not by inexperience necessarily, but it's usually caused by eagerness and anticipation and excitement about the music. And so you want to get to playing the notes, so you get on top of the beat too soon. And so you end up playing a little early. Now, there are certain circumstances where playing early is good. But if you're playing pop music, contemporary pop music, where everything is like quantized to death, then you want to learn how to wait for that one and make sure that when you are playing right on top of the beat. There is a real skill. If you want to hear a really skillful drummer, check out Steve Gadd. Not just because he's got insane chops, because he has, but he has an insane talent for when the music requires it, he can play right on top of the beat. Listen to how he plays Steely Dan's Asia. He is right on top of the beat. And then when you hear him play with Chick Corea, he's actually playing a little tiny fraction bit late. So not only is he waiting for the one to arrive, he's playing the one just a hair after it. What does that do? Well, when you play a little late, it makes the music feel a little bit more relaxed. And the groove kind of flows. It feels like the groove is just kind of surfing on top of the pulse. Like a surfer is surfing on top of the crest of a wave, right? Whereas if you are on top of the beat or, early ahead of the beat, anticipating the beat, it can make the music sound a little rigid and a little mechanical. So in the 80s, because there were drum machines, and drum machines didn't have any humanizing or nuances back then like they have now, they were very, very mechanical. And a lot of drummers had to learn how to play right on top of everything and play those 16th notes extremely precisely, so that they could stay in work. People like Dave Weckl, he learned how to play those 16th notes so that they were very mechanical. And now kind of everybody, as soon as everybody started to realize, hey, drum machines are not taking over. Drum machines are just a useful technology like everybody actually told us they would be. They would never actually take over, but they're just a useful piece of technology for making music. Once everybody understood that, then people like Dave Weckl had to learn how to relax those 16th notes again. And he did. To his credit, he did that. And I tell you, he's a far better drummer for it as well. Let's see. Just Bob says, when laying out the ideas, sometimes causing clunkiness for changes, verse, chorus, etc. Yeah. Here's the thing. In my opinion, music should breathe just like we do, which means the tempo should be allowed to fluctuate and ebb and flow a little bit. Don't be afraid of allowing the music to do that, allowing it to breathe. So maybe when you're going into a chorus, where maybe the harmonic rhythm of the song, i.e. the number of chords per bar, increases a little bit, maybe from 1 chord per bar to 2 chords per bar. So you got the changes happening on beats 1 and 3, for example. So the harmonic rhythm is now doubled. So the song now has a little bit more forward momentum. And maybe one of the things you might want to think about to enhance that excitement is allow the tempo to just increase just a little bit, 2 or 3 beats a minute, maybe. You can do this by automating the tempo track, for example, if you want to kind of do that after the fact. But make that just part of how you play your music. Allow the music to breathe. Allow it to speed up and slow down a little bit. I'm not talking drastic changes of like 20 or 30 beats per minute. I'm talking, 3, 4, 5 beats a minute. Just allow it to tick up a little bit in anticipation of the chorus. The chorus is just a hair faster than the verse, and then you settle back down again, back into the slower harmonic motion of your verse. So allow your song to breathe a bit. Don't worry about it being absolutely rigid, rock solid to a click. To me, this is the bad thing about contemporary pop music today, is everything is quantized to death. Everything is done to the grid to death. Now, there's an obvious reason for that, and the reason for that is to make editing easier. Because if everything is done to the grid, then editing is as simple as chopping things to the grid where you need to, and editing is a breeze when you do that. It's so easy. But when the music has that little ebb and flow, it's much more going to move you emotionally and move you physically than music that's really, really rigid and on top of the beat and to the grid. That's why I don't like much contemporary pop music, because it's just too, for me, it's too mechanical. It's too rigid. It doesn't have that ebb and flow. Whereas if you listen to really, really great songs from the 70s and the 80s, they were never recorded that way because there was no grid. There was no quantize. So you had to just play the best you could. And then editing was not nearly as precise as it is now. So you just had to splice your tape as best you could. And so, you know, but music back then breathes. Again, I'm going to recommend listening to Steely Dan's Asia. Particularly listen to the opening song, Black Cow. Listen to how much space there is between bong, bong, bong and the snare drum. Listen to that. Bong, 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 ba, bong, 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 ba. There's that wait for that backbeat on beat 4. Bong, 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 ba, bong, 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 ba. And it's that makes that whole song move and make you want to actually engage emotionally and physiologically with the song. You don't get that now. You know, Black Cow in 2025 would be like this. Bong, 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 ba, bong, 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 ba. Instead of bong, ba, 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 bong, ba, ba, ba. Hear the difference? The rhythm's a little looser, and there's that beat 4 played just a little bit late. If you quantize everything to the grid, you can't have that snare drum falling late anymore. So, there you go. So the computer takes out with quantizing the skill of those editors who cut tape and put back together, a lost art form. I would agree with that, yeah. Now, I'm not saying editing is super duper easy. Yeah, in a DAW, it's not. It's complicated. But if everything's done to the grid, it's far easier than stuff that's not. I mean, take this as a test. Record a 12-bar blues in Studio One without using a click. Just record it in. Set yourself a tempo. Start playing your guitar. Whack out a rhythm guitar part for a 12-bar blues. Add a bass part. And then, you know, open up Impact and just tap out on a keyboard. Ding, da, da, ding, da, da, ding, da, da, ding. To create a drum track. And then go and try duplicating that to create multiple choruses and then do some editing. It's not impossible, but it is hard. And it's much more time consuming than if you do everything to the grid. And unfortunately, that is the sacrifice you make in the modern digital world that we live in. All right, so I'm going to call it a night there because that was a really great little discussion to finish off. And the 10 people that left when we were talking about the weather have missed out on that. Sorry, folks. That's my fault. I should not have allowed the discussion to derail into meteorology. That's on me. That's my fault. Anyways, with that said, folks, we'll be back here on Sunday for Sunday Night Live. Looking forward to it. Should be a great show. If you have a Studio One question and you it's maybe a little bit more complicated than can be written into chat, drop me an email just like Ron did earlier. Go to johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk. All right? Click on Contact Us. Fill out the form. Ask your question. Put the title, the subject rather, as Question for Sunday Night Live. And you'll be off to the races. Just Bob has done that a couple of times. And now Ron has done it. And if you email your question will be answered at the start of the show. And then we'll get into questions from the chat as per usual. So I'll see you all on Sunday for that, folks. Thank you very much for coming along tonight and watching. We peaked at around about 21, which is actually not bad at all for a Wednesday show. So we got one more show, folks, unless I'm much mistaken. I do believe that this show is show 99 for Songwriting Simplified. I could be mistaken, but I think next Wednesday's show will be the 100th Songwriting Simplified show on this channel. So there will be a small celebration, but really the bigger celebration is going to be for the 500th show of Sunday Night Live. We are heading very quickly in that general direction. It's only going to be a matter of weeks before we get there. But we will have a proper celebration for that. I'll have some guests on the show for that. For sure. All right, folks. Take care. I'll see you Sunday, 6 p.m. Central, back here. Be here or be a dodecahedron. Good night.